That's a tough one, and we need to have a documentary about it. Because I had a lot of dreams of building things where I can feel that I had a special contribution. I left my mark onto that. And in the beginning, when I chose the university, it was a big debate as my family was trying to push me toward more concrete architecture or engineering into the constructions. But I chose to go for the IT. And I did it in a way in which, in the end, I doubled down on two universities and I mixed it with the economics. So I finished by a major in AI in the Polytechnic University in Bucharest, and also a major in macroeconomy in the cybernetics faculty in ASE. And that gave me, I would say, a wide perspective. And initially I started hands-on in IT. I wanted to build things. It was very satisfying that when you are starting to code, you're already seeing the results of your efforts in minutes. And for the first years, I was building, but then I got, let's say, a bit dissatisfied by the fact that there were always, let's say, requirements that were not really dedicated to the real customers, and I was feeling frustrated. So I started moving toward designing products, making those products more desirable for the customers, and also making those products more, let's say, accessible, or putting an emphasis on customer experience, thinking about the subconscious of the user, what makes him select one product or another. So I slowly moved to, by going through several businesses and several roles, into my growth hacking practice, which was the activity that I was having just before starting the venture part. So first of all, probably because I built a lot of products, helps me connect with the struggle that many of the founders have, helps me be very supportive in their endeavor to identify those key elements in the growth of the company, in the adoption of the product. My management expertise and years help me also step back and try to have a more strategic approach to what the startups need, because many times when you do a startup, when you are an entrepreneur, you're just get your sleeve down and get down to work. And it's important to also have the global vision, to also remind what is the motivation behind what are you trying to achieve in order to keep the correct course, and really build for a successful future of the startup. So I would say that to some extent, maybe all of the ingredients and the experiences that I had in the past helped me become the venture investor that I am now, or the mentor that I am in many of the accelerators and incubators where we get involved. I was having that growth hacking practice of my own, and also I was having a startup at that point, which in the end died. It's again another experience that helps me be very close to the founders. And I was trying to optimize my funnel, because it's a very challenging environment in Romania in terms of the businesses. Like a huge percentage of them are just fighting from one day to another. And growth hacking, innovation, securing or investing in the future of the company is not that familiar into the Romanian environment. So I was thinking how to optimize my efforts, and one of the things that I decided to do is create a funnel by collaborating with companies that were doing transformations into the culture of companies, and also to start collaborations with private equity companies, where the hope was that they are not just flipping the part of the financing part, and also they want to relaunch those companies to be competitive on the market, and therefore there was required a degree of innovation and of, let's say, repositioning and growth hacking as a practice. So this is how I ended up starting working with ROCA at that point, which was the private equity in the Impetum group. I was helping them do some works on companies like Frigotehnica, Scarp, and so on. And at some point, like 1 year something after we were already collaborating and I was almost getting inside into the group, or as an insider instead of a consultant from the outside, the idea appeared that, and this is a small joke, that the group shouldn't take care only of the dead and the wounded, the insolvency and the distress, and should look forward for building new things. And the first idea was the venture. This is Andrei's idea to also get some arm, and this is how the discussion appeared, how we can build that, who knows about technology. And this is where I came into the scene and we started building ROCA X. And then also in other parts of the group, things started to shift from distress to more scale up to and so on. So more positive thinking than saving. Spring, summer 2018. We were working together for about a year until the first time ROCA X appeared as a concept. And this is a funny story because we wanted to start ROCA X, but at the same time it's difficult to do all the let's say formalities into. So the first thing we wanted to test the market, and we did a very startup approach, meaning that we created a booth at Tech Sylvania with cookies. So you know that joke about we have cookies, don't come to the dark side. And we wanted to meet all the founders and to see how big the ecosystem is, how promising it is. And so we're talking about ROCA X like it was something real, but it was just the booth and our hopes. And then only in 2 months or three, or up to 3, we managed to raise the capital and start do the first closing. So moving very fast, so very startup approach, testing the concept, making it happen, and give it a go. They were surprised by the different approach because normally it was just a few players saying, "Oh, I've seen that," and we were saying, "We have cookies. Tell us about you." And so it was a more friendly approach. They felt closer to us, and this is how probably we started building those relationships and having a name for ourselves. And obviously that name evolved with all the contributions that we provided for our startups in the portfolio, for all the consultancy and mentorship that we provided in startups that we are not involved, but we are mentoring, we're supporting, because we believe that it's very important for the entire ecosystem to grow. So one extraordinary thing that I would say about the venture and in general the startup ecosystem is that it's a very collaborative one, which is at the extreme end compared to the corporate world, where in many cases you aren't able to not even to discuss about what you're doing with your competitor. And here we are supporting together some of the startups, sharing experiences, being in the same boards, and so on and so forth. So yeah. Okay, there are several questions into this one. So the mission of Impetum is to support the growth and the build of an entrepreneurial ecosystem in all of its facets and angles. And this is why it's so spread among from insolvency, where they are the starting point was there, and also the name was grown because of the fact that they were the first ones saving companies and relaunching them, and not just chopping them and selling and getting a commission. So the mission was from the beginning on. Probably the best person to talk about that would be Andrei, as a founder of the group, and his vision in how he developed one by one of these products. Obviously, there was an opportunity, and ROCA appeared first of all because that vision of saving the value in the Romanian economy was not supported by the will of taking a risk from Romanian investors. And there was always, you can have a plan, but you also need the capital. So we know that also from the startups. So you cannot do anything without the money. Although one of the Romanian expressions is everybody can do it with money. What about without? Which is a killer for the companies actually. Therefore, this is how appeared first time the idea of trying to attract capital to be managed under Impetum and be able to deploy it where they know what are the odds and they believe in the success. Because obviously there are several stages in the life of a company. For all these stages, there could be a pillar in Impetum at some point. There have been, at least at this point, the initiative about venture to start building in a correct way the businesses, so advising from the beginning, because in many situations, again, the entrepreneurial spirit, it's great, but sometimes many of the companies in Romania are not built to last. It's a title of a book, because there isn't a long-term vision, and there's always done what is stopping the fire that's burning right now. There are situations in which the mistrust that we have as a society, it's a very big issue, because companies get stuck into their evolution by the fact that every decision, even the most minor one, needs to be taken by the entrepreneur. And this is a question of trust between us as a society, as team members, and so on. So therefore, knowing each of these challenges and understanding what are the bottlenecks in the growth of the companies, for each Impetum try to create a product. Some have more traction, or let's say a wider market, and they have been deployed earlier, like ROCA X, and Agista. And there are lots of other plans for the future to build even further new verticals there. On one hand, it's the past and the future discussion, because ROCA X, it's a fund manager, and in its lifetime can manage for more than one fund. So there is the past about what is the current philosophy and thesis for the fund number one. There will be a future, so that could be a bit different about what is the thesis there and what we approach. In general, we are very early stage investors. Apart from the fact that we invest in tech companies, and we evolved a bit from the tech-enabled companies, because nowadays any business needs to be tech-enabled, into more tech at the core, so selling that technology, less of a transactional, less of a commission in a completely different market based on a platform. Apart from this, we have been very open to innovation in any domain. On one hand, because the depthness of the ecosystem in Romania is not that large, so we cannot expect into a certain niche to have hundreds of startups in order to cherry pick the ones. In the end, the mission as a venture capital is also it's obviously to support the growth of the ecosystem, but it is to provide returns to the LPs. So in order to provide those returns to the LPs, you cannot just spray and pray and give support to all the companies. You need to select the ones which have higher chances. And because of this, the shallowness of the ecosystem, we've been very open to look at the innovations in any of the domains. And this brings the challenge on how to judge those innovations. And on one hand, obviously, we try to get a team with a wider experience as possible in multiple domains and seeing a lot of things. But here it was also the differentiator coming from the group, because as a group with all these verticals in which we have been involved, we have been or are in administrative positions in several hundreds companies at any given time. And we can reach out to the experts in any domain. So just as an anecdote, I was evaluating a startup in the Balkans that was creating a software for the pilots. And even my father has been working in aviation in his early days. I didn't have the knowledge to judge whether that was a relevant tool. But through the group, through the connections that we had, we managed, like in just a few days, to reach out the heads of 2 Romanian companies in aviation, get recommendations for the head of training and head of to really understand how things are working, what is the correct pricing, and if the answer is positive, The additional thing is, yeah, I like this, then immediately is I want the product. So if I want the product, we solve one of the biggest challenges of the early stage startups, which is providing early stage traction. There are several types of investors, and it depends also on the stage. Like later stage is more like purely financial. Earlier stage, we are a very hands-on investor, even though we are as a minority. All VCs just take stakes of 5, 10, 15%. So there will never be a majority. But one way in which I described, and finally one of our founders understood how he can use us best, is that we are sort of like their own private consultancy firm, like a big four, that can funnel a lot of knowledge from the outside and can support them through the tough times. But we cannot do the job in their place. So we are hands-on in the sense that we are very close to the business. We try to understand all the challenges. We support them with advice on multiple areas. We support them even directly on multiple areas like I don't know, HR we have, because we have at the group level, we supported them there. We have a lot of, we had capacities on PR and marketing to give them more advice on those topics. But at the same time, we cannot do the job in their place. So although we are always on a lookout for opportunities for them to sell, we will not be able to do the sales in instead of them, or raise instead of them. I would say that one common thing from the region, because we are very active also outside Romania, is the quality of the technical knowledge. So in the region there are very good IT resources through the entire stage of outsourcing. They got exposed to global challenges. So they are aware of what's happening elsewhere. They can come up with the ideas to sell to create global products. However, what we don't have, again, in general in the region, is the experience or the sales culture. We don't have that natural approach of public speaking, of taking more risks, of accepting sometimes failures, because this is one of the things that presses a lot on all of us, the fear of failure, which is against the spirit of venture and fail fast and start again and take the glory out of that, because you accumulated and you learn something, and the next try is going to be better because you are tougher. So this is the biggest challenge of Romanian founders. In general, especially in Romania, more of the founders are more technical into background, and against Western Europe, where there are more businesses started by business people searching for technical co-founders. And this is with the good and the bad. The good part is the fact that we are sure that they are able to build the products. The bad thing is that selling, and especially selling outside our ecosystem, it becomes a bit tougher. One of the pitfalls for Romania is the fact that we are not a big enough market, but we appear big enough sometimes. And therefore, some of the founders tend to say, okay, but I'm market leader, or I'm the only one here. Why are you pushing me to go outside? And this is a pitfall, because they are not able to grow at the level that they need only on the Romanian market. And they are not able also to get the financing needed only on the Romanian market, because you don't have the players to have a Series C, Series D, even in other parts of Europe, and you cannot reach that stage only with the revenues in Romania. And the investors from outside Romania are investing only if they see traction in their ecosystem. So it's difficult from somebody, I don't know, in London office to come and invest into a company that's a market leader in Romania, regardless of however, because they don't understand that part. So this is a pitfall, and an advantage for the startups in the region is that there are many. The smaller the country, the more global they are thinking from day one, and this helps them scale sometimes faster. Should, everybody has. It's a question of being honest about that. So what we try to impose here as a general rule and educate is the need for transparency and the need for correct expectations. And also that's why we did a few researches on seeing the expectations of Romanian high net worth individuals, and they're far away from what is reality. And from day one, when we started to raise, we tried to prepare them for what comes, because we always talk about the very big success stories where you have like 200x, 300x, whatever, and the decacorns and unicorns. But and this is the engine to attract attention to the venture field, a venture field which is the engine for the growth in the economy, the innovation of the economy, and an economy to be competitive needs to be innovative. So it's very, very important. But at the same time, these expectations need to be realistic, and we are always saying from day one that for this early stage, 65% of the investments will bring returns less than the value invested, so less than 1x. The battle is to have those 5%, 3% that have 20. I think under 1% are the ones with the 100x for very early stage investments. So obviously, through the 4 years of our existence, we already have 2 success stories of exits, very fast, opportunistical, good IRRs, but we also have already 4 companies that we wrote off as fast as possible, because we don't want the zombies to be chasing us in the portfolio. It's always in the portfolio you have a few champions that are driving the support and the hope that you will get all those returns. We are very confident in the promise that we made in terms of the multiples that we are going to return. But there is another very often found question, which is the winner in your portfolio. And in this situation, I would say that it's very difficult to name one, and it's good to have a herd or a group of, because things are changing so fast. You have a war here, you have a tragedy on a particular niche, and the champion from today can become the loser from tomorrow, and one of the companies that is doing so and so right now can find a small pivot and then boom, grow exponentially and be that winner. So that's why we also try to provide the same support to all the startups that are really having chances to further grow. There are 2 aspects here. One is the size of the fund that you raise. So this is always will impact how big is the ticket that you are able to write. But at the same time, I don't think that necessarily it's good to move into that space for us. On one hand, because the knowledge and the contribution I think that we provide is very decisive in the early stages. The later stage you go, my hope, at least looking at the macro approach of Romania, is that normally the company should get investors from outside Romania. Because the later stage you get, then the bigger revenue the company needs to have, and those revenues cannot be obtained only on the Romanian market. And therefore, regardless of how big, and we have a very solid network across Europe, and also we're expanding it to the US, but foot on the ground and the support in the geography that you are expanding is very, very important. So the small niche in which we could decide to balance is between pre-seed, where we have been very active, and seed, which we already did to provide a balanced portfolio to our LPs. But I think we will stick to this area. Ticket size, however, it's going to grow a bit because we know the forces in the market. From when we started in 2019, salaries for developers, salaries in general in Romania have increased. In the region, the same movements, and also because looking deeper at how startups are behaving is very important to give them a real chance. Meaning that I'm very confident in the creative and efficient spirit of Romanian and regional founders, because we have a very common background to some extent, but they can be 2 times, 3 times more effective than in the West, they cannot be 10, 20 times. So when you get a startup in Silicon Valley that gets as pre-seed a 10 million ticket, maybe they will need to have a 1 million tickets at least in here to start growing and avoid the situation which is these days in the ecosystem where Romanian startups have a very similar idea with very good quality founders. They struggle to get like 300K. You cannot do with 300K what they are doing with 3 million or 10 million in there. There are two parts of this question, or two sources of this challenge that we currently have in the ecosystem. One is the actual capacity to create something on hardware, and this cannot sit only on the shoulders of startup founders, because creating things on hardware require a lot more investments, require facilities to do that, and to obtain that, sure, it's possible. I'm not very confident that the forces we need to get involved, political, administrative, universities also, which have a very important role for the laboratories, the facilities that can put at the disposal of founders, will join forces and will make it happen. But there is a possibility, especially because I would say that, as Seinfeld was saying, we have people everywhere. So there is a slight chance that Romanians which are abroad and are working in such facilities would be able, with that knowledge, to start things here and work with production outside. But production, I don't think is going to happen anytime soon. The second aspect of this situation and source of the situation is the fact that the success stories, they brought the engine to grow, but at the same time they narrowed the areas of interest. And to have a really entrepreneurial ecosystem, as the mission that we were saying about the Impetum and the ROCA X is in the same direction, needs to have a widespread of initiatives. So in Romania there are too many VCs or angels or parties involved into this ecosystem focusing only to enterprise SaaS because the success came from enterprise SaaS. There should be more focus also on or opportunities for the founders to get money to grow those companies into maybe it's B2C, maybe it's B2B, but small and medium businesses. Maybe it's not, we have this thesis about tech at the core, but maybe there are lots of businesses which are tech enabled, and the diversification of the investment sources needs to be an important step into the ecosystem so that the ecosystem really takes off and maintains that innovation in all areas of the economy. We are now in a small, let's say, downfall because we have, unfortunately, when I started getting into this business, there was almost no business, because we know the history. Catalyst has been the only one initially for startups, then Gap, then Early Game. So it was a very small group. In the meantime, more accelerators, more incubators, more names on the table, more crowdfunding and things like that. However, at the current moment, there is a fall. So it was all growing up. 2021, we know it was the all-time high for venture capital, not only in Romania, but globally. 2022 was a good year, in my opinion, but the press was negative because it was not as good or not just going over 2021. The prolonged effects of both the international crisis and in terms of finance, and also the situation that we have on the local market about the availability of financing. The institutional money have been late to support, so has been a gap created into the financing opportunities. At the same time, the negative feeling have kept the potential angel investors and private high net worth individuals getting more involved to support that. We have some money coming from the outside in the region, but they are not, I would say, they don't support enough. We cannot count on the others to help support the growth of our ecosystem. And this is felt into the, let's say, less will of the potential founders to jump right now without any parachute and without any financing option into establishing new businesses. But on the long run, I'm totally confident that the ecosystem will keep on growing. Again, because we have that talent, because the more success stories, the more founders will come, the more success stories we'll have, the more investors will come into the ecosystem. And I also hope that in time we'll manage to have more education into diversifying the investment options, the way to build portfolios, and how to really contribute and get a win-win situation from the ecosystem and the investors. It's a long list that could be there, and the thing is that it can be very dynamic, this answer, because something that can start from an idea that could be a nice to have, if they are really careful at what the customer wants and they are listening to it, then they are able to pivot into something that it's a must-have. So what we try to say, because in the selection criteria for startups, there's always a huge factor onto the founding team. And there are some times and some players which are putting everything just on the founding team. We try to balance that, and we say that definitely it's important to have a good founding team, and it's a whole story what do we think it's a good founding team or a complete team. But at the same time, we put it in balance with the good idea that can take off in that environment. And this has been our approach, meaning that my experience into building products, into understanding the customer behavior, helps me, let's say, forecast better what can happen with the behavior, what are the traction points, at the same time the bottlenecks of a particular product, in order to determine which one, in which category that product will fall. But we don't exclude the opportunity that somebody can pivot, can find, start from a very wild idea with less chances, and then pivot if they have this carefulness for the customers. Unfortunately, coming back to another question of you, which was about what challenges founders have, is that in many situations we are not used to get that feedback, to digest the feedback in order to improve the product. And too often the founding team says, no, the product is great, but these users are not to the level that I was expecting. And this is definitely not a successful startup. Probably, I know it all attitude sometimes. I would say, especially looking, and I was trying to provide at some point an overview on the mentoring. The tendency to say that there's a recipe for all things, so just coming with the metrics and saying this applies to everything is not the correct way. Businesses come from various niches, behaviors of the customers are different. So there are opportunities to try things from one area to another, but saying this is the way to do it, it's a very wrong approach. There's no one size fits all. And that's why we think it's very important to be very close to the founders, to really understand them, that market and the behavior of their customers, so that we are able to advise them properly. So this would be one of the challenges, I would say, in the way investors behave in Romania. We have also situations in which, regarding enterprise SaaS, the focus, you find out the product is very great, very good and appreciated by the customers in a SMB, or you should move to the enterprise world because there are the real money. And some products might make it, but they really need to be prepared for that market, and it's very difficult to make the transition. There's a difference between going in flip-flops to sell and going always in a suit and selling in cycles of 12 to 18 months sometimes in enterprise, against selling to, I don't know, SMB founders that if you get in the right mood, they are saying tomorrow I want the product and I want it functional. Obviously, it's growing, and mostly I think one important aspect is also closing cycles. So for me in 2024, I'm hoping for the first exits. Actually, we have very good signs into that direction, although the things are not that nice in these days in the ecosystem. But the hopes are there, meaning that we see a movement, we started seeing more term sheets, we started seeing even M&As. So this, I would say, is the major milestone to really show that it's a repetitive thing, that the exits that we already done with the good IRRs are not one-off, and actually deliver on the promise that we have to our LP. So this is the first and most important milestone that I foresee in 2024. Second is building a new venture. Okay, so but for this I need to leave it for the next interview.